everyone to balance your phones, please. We are live streaming.
Allow me to introduce you to ADAMA.
Atlanta is the Black Mecca. We know this already. We are home to people of African descent and the epicenter of arts and culture.
But where can you go to experience Black art and culture, illuminating the depth and breadth of the African diaspora?
Launched in March 2020 as a museum without walls, ADAMA quickly emerged as a space that is already engaged in communities around the world.
The best part about being a founding member of ADAMA
is knowing that I'm part of making history.
By contributing to ADAMA, you're joining a global community of dreamers and builders,
bringing forth a world-class museum
that highlights the Black global experience.
And it's all happening here.
Right here.
Right here.
Right here, right now.
Right here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Join us.
Give.
And get involved.
ADAMA.
And welcome to the ADAMA Arts Salon. My name is Dr. Fahamu Pecou. I'm the founder of the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta, also known as ADAMA, and we're coming to you live from our new home here at Pittsburgh Arts in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for joining us, for those of you online and those of you in our studio audience. Make some noise. It is a thrill to be here yet again and to welcome our guest today, Ms. Kimberly Binns, multifaceted, interdisciplinary, amazing artist. I'm really excited to get in conversation with you today. But before we do, just wanted to say for those of you online, as we have our conversations, if you have a question or if something comes up, please feel free to drop a question in the comments, and we'll try to bring it into the conversation. And we'll also engage our studio audience here today with questions as well. But then let's get started. You ready?
Thank you. Yeah, I think so.
You got any shout outs you want to make before we get started?
Just shout out to everybody who's here and everybody who's watching, and appreciate everyone who's supporting me in my work and just being here. And even if you don't know me, just being nosy to find out who I am and what I do and what I'm about. I appreciate all of you.
Well, it's one of the things that I've always been really fascinated about when it comes to your work as an artist is you have a very, well, every artist has a very unique journey, so, but yours is unique amongst those unique journeys, right? Like you are, you have a background in interior design, done architecture work, you've made like clothing, like sewing and, drawing, painting, like there's so many different modalities that you engage as a creative. And I wanted to maybe have you talk a little bit about what your journey has been, to where you are now.
Yes, I like this word modality, because that's definitely what I have a lot of. So yeah, to your point, my entry into creative life as an artist really didn't begin until I was a grown-up, like bills. You know, I didn't come out of art school or, you know, in my 20s, you know, just kind of getting out there. I had a whole other life. That's another conversation for another day. But I always had creativity within me. I was always interested in the arts. I was always interested in how people made things and did things. I'm very much a tactile person, as you know. And I just like exploring and understanding. And just overall, I'm a naturally curious person. And I always have been. But growing up, you know, the arts or a career in the arts or any sort of creative career was not something that was top of mind or presented to me. So I very much started this journey just on my own, understanding what I like to do, and more importantly, how I like to work, and what kind of work I wanted to like be doing all the time.
I'm curious about that as well, because you know you described moving into these like creative endeavors despite having a different type of life. So did you find that these this creative output or this creative expression was sort of like therapeutic for you, or was it just, you know, experimenting around? Was it just playing around? Like did you move into it with any deliberation or intention?
I did move into it with intention when I went back to school to get a fine arts degree. Because I knew at least I wanted to have that or do that, because that's just what I knew. I was like, okay, well, you can get a degree in art some kind of way, so that's when I went back and did that. And you know, my intent was, you know, I had this grand dream of being this fantastic architectural designer, and I would live in Japan and design, and like I took Japanese in college just one semester. Don't ask me any questions. But that was my ambition. That was my motivation. You know, the reality was I had, you know, I had life. So I, you know, had to make a few pivots. And you know, when I did get my degree, it was kind of like it was at the height of the housing meltdown, and nothing was happening. I was not going to be working at any design studio, architecture, whatever. Nothing. None of that was happening. So I really had to figure out, okay, I have this set of skills that I attained by matriculating through this arts program. What other things can I do? So I had a background in photography and started there, you know, just doing it as a hobby. And I think the very, very first thing I won as a creative self was I won first place in Atlanta Celebrates Photography. They had I forget the exact thing, but they have this program or they have this event where you can pin up. It's just open to everybody. What is it? The push pin show. And I won first place. And I was like, oh, okay, this is something. And that was really exciting. So from there, I got into doing video. And my partner, Fabian Williams, he, you know, had some videos he needed to put together. He's like, hey, can you put these things together? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I can try it. And I did, and that kind of started a whole other trajectory.
I'm gonna push the pause button.
Pause.
How did you know how to do this?
I just had to learn.
You taught yourself as you were doing it.
Yes. He showed me just some basics, and then I just ran with it. I will say that what got me through being able to learn that and pick that up was having a background working in CAD and Revit. You know, there's the sensibility that you have in working in in that platform is the same as editing. It's a lot of repetitive, a lot of, minute details sort of things. So that, segue into editing, it's kind of the same thing. So that's how I was able to do that. And, also learn some After Effects and some motion graphic things. And again, this goes back to just my natural curiosity in knowing how to do things. I like knowing how to do things. You ask me how to change your oil in your car, I can probably tell you. That's the kind of person I am. Well, not today's cars, but anyway. But yeah, it just spoke to just my general sensibility about just understanding.
Okay.
I did some videography for a while, and how I even started like getting work, getting paid to do things. Honestly, I just put myself out there, and I'll tell you what I did. The Atlanta Contemporary Arts Salon, where we met. They had this program called what's it called? I can't remember the name of this fair, but it was a fair where different arts companies and showcase, all of their magazines and things. So I went just on my own because I was interested, and I took my camera and I just shot some video. Nobody asked me to do this. Nobody paid me. Nobody knew who I was. And then I went home and made a recap. And I sent it to them. I was like, hey, I was at your event and I made this little recap for you. Here you go. And from there, the next event they had, they reached out to me and they're like, hey, can you shoot this recap video? We would like for you to do that. So that's how that happened. I mean, the moral of the story, okay, before I get to the moral of the story. Well, actually, no. The moral of the story is and it took me a long time to get here, but I had to think of myself doing something else and just figure out how to make that happen. And it comes with just believing in, my abilities. I know I have these skill sets. I have these abilities. Sometimes knocking on the door and asking is not going to get you there. Sometimes you just have to kick the door in and be like, hey, I did this, and I'm showing you this.
Yeah. And I agree. I think it's a great example, a great lesson, I think, for a lot of artists. I think a lot of times we think that we have to wait for somebody to discover you, right? But sometimes, and it's not even sometimes sometimes you gotta make it.
Yeah.
You gotta make
exactly.
it one
Yes.
Yes. It sounds like that's what you did.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, I, worked in videos for quite a while. Worked on a wonderful project that we did, which is still my favorite, by the way. And just kind of worked in that vein for a couple of years. And, once again, just like, okay, saying to myself, this is cool. But there's something else I think I want to do, or I think I can do X, Y, Z, or what does this feel like? And even though I have kind of been making my way in the video realm and editing, I still had this desire for the design piece of what I spent all that time and money learning how to do. So then I was like, okay, well, I do know that working in a design firm is not how I want to work. I'm just not an office person. So I came to terms with that first. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not doing that. But then I was like, okay, well, theater, they need set designers, and set designers have to know how to do things. Okay, so I started going that route, and how I even got, think that, how I got into that. There's an organization here, C4 Atlanta. They used to have this event called the Unifieds. And Unifieds is a job fair for theater artists, but in reverse. So instead of theaters setting up, or production houses setting up tables for artists to come and visit and whatever, you as an artist or creative, you would set up your table and show what you could do for the theater. Right. So I got wind of this because by this time I had, I think I'd taken a class or something, before, hey, this thing is happening, So I was like, oh, okay, this is great. I'm going to do this. So to this point, like I said, I've mostly had video work to show. So I put together a reel of what I had. And then I was thinking, well, okay, I'm going to be at this table with this computer, just with video running. I don't know how that's going to, translate if somebody's going to spend 3 minutes, to watch, whatever. So I said, okay, I need something tangible to show that I have something explicit. So this was the day before the event. I went online and found a schematic of just a theater space and made a scale model of that theater, just so I could show, and I still have it. And I still have it. It's in the basement. I still have it. And I just, so I had these little seats, around, and I made that, and I took that with me. So I had that set on the table, and my video running, and resumes and all this, glossy, fancy stuff. And a couple people came through, and it was kind of quiet for a couple weeks after that. And then maybe about a month or so, a month and a half later, I get an email from Rachel May, who's the executive director of Synchronicity Theater. And she says, hey, I got your information from the Unifieds event. We have a designer coming in, and he needs someone to help him with tech. So it wasn't me designing stuff, it was just me setting up things. She says, we have projectors and we need them set up. Is this something you can do? I said yes. My mouth said yes, but my mind was like, okay, how hard could this be, right? They have 3 projectors, they need to set them up, hook them up to a computer, boom. I was like, oh, I got this. Just go, HDMI cords here, here, and here, and I'm done. That is not how that works. And I found that out when I got there. Not only did I find that out when I got there, but I had to actually mount the projectors, which I'd never done. So they had these, they had 3 projectors mounted in the space. 1 was permanent, 2 I had to put up. So that meant, first, okay, let me back up. I have never worked in theater, ever. I have no background in theater. I don't know anybody who does theater. So this was all new to me. The lingo, just the protocol. I didn't know, lights going dark. Okay, what are you talking about? Thank you, dark. What does that mean? Who are you thanking? Just the nomenclature and processes. I didn't know any of these things, but the school of YouTube is wonderful.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Where there's a will, there's a way. So I get there and I gotta figure this out. Come to find out there's a special device that you have to use to connect, multiple projectors, and then once you do that, you gotta connect to the computer, and it's a whole thing. So, but I figured it out, and that show went on, and it was great. So that was my very, very first theater experience. And then after that, the next call was, hey, we have a show, we want you to do video design, projection designs for the show. So that's where I am, and that's where I'm doing now. I just the other week, last week, I closed out a 3-week run of the Donna Summer musical. I did the projection designs for that. Coming up is The Wiz. So I'm working on that project next. And I've got another project in a couple of weeks out in Portland. So I just move and just go with the flow.
But I think that's the beautiful thing about it, right? Like, again, you know, so much of our ideas, right, about being a practicing artist is that you got to go to school and get a degree, and then somebody's going to come and pick you because your work is that good. But what you're describing is not, again, waiting for someone to discover you or give you an opportunity, but creating opportunities where you see, you know, where you see potential and you see possibility, right? And even, you know, a very common story amongst many successful artists is getting that phone call for, hey, can you do and you will have no idea how to do it, but your answer is, yeah, I can do that. And you will figure it out. It's like being thrown into a pool and figuring out how to swim. You know what I mean? Like, but you know, it's that kind of thing that also demonstrates, you know, the commitment to a craft, right? Like having talent is one thing, but the practice and the commitment to your talent is really what sets you apart from other artists, right?
Yes. And I want to reiterate, knowing how you like and need to work. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't do as well in, you know, an office setting. And I own that. And okay, if I know that, then the opportunities I see will not be that. And I think it's just it's a know thyself moment. You really need to know what you like and know what works for you. And that goes a long way in opening doors as well. Just being true to scenarios that will help in your success.
The term I use is authenticity.
Authenticity.
You know, we get a lot of young artists often saying, how did you do this and how did you get here? And I'm like, I can tell you every step that I took. Right? But that doesn't mean that's going to be the way you do it.
That's right.
You know? And when you embrace your path, right, then that path opens up for you instead of looking across at what somebody else is doing. But I don't want to keep drilling on that. Let's talk about your most recent exhibition at Fahamu Pecou, because that was a really fascinating exhibition and a really important story that was being told through that work.
Right. So my latest solo exhibition was Homefront and Other Memories. It was at Hogwarts Gallery, which is downtown Auburn Avenue. Former funeral home, historic funeral home, but now a cultural arts space, multi-use space. But yeah, Homefront and Other Memories was a collection of works that I created that spoke to the legacy of housing segregation in this country and how it's reverberated throughout generations and how it continues to affect our communities, not just where we live, but our health outcomes, our education outcomes, our financial outcomes. And how all this got started, I didn't say this before, but I do have a studio practice. I do drawing and paintings. I put things on paper and canvas and things. And I was approached by Robin Burnett from Poem 88. Funny story, she reached out to me. This was 2021, so we're in pandemic. And she says, hey, I would like to do an exhibition of, your family photographs. And I was like, okay. I thought she had me confused with somebody else. So I was like, all right. But, I talked to her and basically she wanted to, an exhibition that highlighted the safety of home within the context of the pandemic. And
just for a clarification question, she wanted to, was she familiar with your family photograph?
She looked through my Instagram feed. And anybody who knows me knows I am social media adverse. I maybe post, 2 things once a quarter. I'm exaggerating, but I'm not really prolific on social media. So I was curious too. I was like, what picture is she talking about? So she said that she found just going through my Instagram, and I guess the photos I had posted of my family and myself, and just kind of doing what we do, spoke to her and felt really authentic and warm and safe and inviting. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for that. So that's what she was referencing. And as I talked to her more, I was like, okay, let me figure out what this will be. And it was just around the same time that I had been reading this book, Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and had heard an interview by him where he talked about the legacy of housing segregation and just, the federal government's role in that. And I was like, okay, that's a layer that I feel like I want to explore. But then I was like, okay, she's saying safety, in the context of the pandemic. Well, we were not only in the pandemic, but we were witnessing, Black folks dying just at home, like literally at home. And so from that, I crafted the work. And that was the first show that I did at Poem 88. So the elements of that included text from the federal government, showing redlining practices that were of the day, and just really showing in print the federal government saying, you as a person of Negro ancestry cannot live in this community. And if you are a white person, you cannot sell your home forever and ever, ever to a person of African ancestry. It is just crazy, I mean, like I said earlier, we are Black folks in America. We know about segregation. We know about the things. But I was just struck by really, really learning from this book in that interview, the extent to which the federal government created the system of segregation. And a lot of times segregating communities that were not, where there was no segregation. Right. Anyway, they just came in and like, oh wait, if you want this funding for this mortgage, y'all gotta be over here, and you guys gotta be over here. So that was the impetus for creating the work. And the work included a combination of fine art that I created. I also do a series of these large-scale digital collages, and also video, what I call video collages. And in these collages, I source and reference archival text, imagery, sometimes video, and I craft them to create the story, to really tell the story. And I'm gonna back up. So how I even got here was I felt like in the noise, all the noise that was going on, these talking heads on TV, I felt like nobody was talking about the why of things, the why of protests, the why of calls for action. And that was also what was on my mind as I was creating this work. And that's also what I wanted the work to convey. I wanted people to understand, hey, we're living in this space, but this is why we're here.
It was designed for it.
It was this, right. So that's what the show was about. It also had several pieces that spoke to community erasure, because that's a big thing. It has always been a thing. And I think the most tragic one we probably all know is Tulsa. And so there was work in the show that referenced Tulsa. And here, you know, there are communities in Buckhead, communities in Buckhead that are gone. You know?
This community,
Pittsburgh, yeah.
South Atlantic.
Yeah. So, you know, and I don't want people to, you know, come away like, oh, you know, doom and gloom, you know. But I do think it is important to understand the history of things, the context of things. That's what's getting us in trouble over and over and over. We're not listening, paying attention, understanding the context, historical context of why.
You know, to your point, so much of the challenges that we have in the community, the things that artists are wrestling with and questioning and challenging, right? Like, is responding to the experience of those things, right? Like, these systems are put in place, these systems are designed, right, to have a certain kind of effect and impact. And it becomes almost the responsibility of artists in a lot of ways to react and respond to those things.
Yes, I agree.
But I think it's really interesting too, the ways in which these ideas of design, these ideas of architecture, these ideas of, you know, systems and implementation, you know, of different, again, modalities, right, continue to show up in your work, right? And so even though it wasn't, you're not in Japan designing, you know, homes, right? Like, you're still incorporating all of those different skill sets that you've acquired along the way into your creative practice, right? Which I think is a really interesting thing. Can you talk a little bit more about you know, how those things continue to show up for you?
Yeah, so I one thing that was some feedback I received from my artist talk was about family legacy. And it was personal to me, and I really had to think about it. And I was like, yeah, you know, I kind of focus on a lot of the work shows, you know, families, and I was asking myself, well, why is that? And I realized that for myself, I can only go back so far in knowing my family history and legacy. And I think somehow that's what the work is also helping me to work out or work through. The architectural piece of it, that's, you know, very much just understanding what a physical home means. You know, I did not grow up wealthy, and there were things that I would see that I guess were things that I desired, right? I would see, you know, flipping through magazines, seeing this house. Oh, it'd be great to be there. And maybe that's what the element of architecture is fleshing out in the work for me as well. Yeah. But maybe not just me personally, but for all of us. You know, just what does being grounded in a structure in a space that's beautiful and welcoming and inviting and intentional. What does that mean? And I think that's what's coming through.
Yeah, I think it's also, really, again, fascinating to think about, to pull from your word, intention. It's really interesting to think about what it means to build, community, to structure our family with intention. Again, I think that so many of us operate from the standpoint of the external, right?
Yes.
From what we can see from the outside without really thinking about what it takes to get, to, it's kind of like what you were saying, like, we respond to the issue without the why. Like, how did we get here in the first place?
Right.
And I think, a part of what you're showing us through your practice is that you can be intentional in building, crafting, constructing, right? And the world and the life that you want to have.
Yes.
You've done it as an artist, and you do it in your art. You know what I mean?
Yes. Thank you. That's a great assessment. You did your job.
I think, at this point, we can check out to see if there's any questions online or any questions from our audience here as well. Yeah.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, friend.
I want to know because you are so prolific, what is the final frontier for you, or what's the next frontier that you would like to explore and integrate into your practice?
Oh, that's a great question. The first thing I want to do is travel the work. I want to be showing work elsewhere. Let me rephrase that. I will.
There it is.
There it is. I'm also interested in teaching. I want other young women who look like me to know that this is work that they could do as well. I'll certainly continue to expand on the body of work that I'm doing. And I keep it open. I'm just, whatever the next thing comes, whatever the next ask is. But yeah, okay.
Are there any modalities that you haven't explored yet that you're interested in, that's on your radar?
So I really love animation. I know it's not like super high tech, but I love animation. And I have been thinking about ways to incorporate that into the work. I think for me, it's really a matter of time, just putting the time in, because that modality takes time to craft and do. But that is something that I am interested in. I've been doing a lot of large scale installation work with my cohort, Charmaine and and I really like doing that work. I would like to continue to do that at scale and over an extended period of time, because right now, those installations are short term, and it would be great to have some sort of programming that extended, that sort of large scale public art projection work. I'm interested in, I told you I'm very tactile. I like working with my hands, so I'm interested in building, and whether that's sculpture or woodworking, I'm interested in that too. I find that I have to do things that way for my well-being, because I feel like I just function better if I just have a lot of things to do. Not chaos, but just having some purpose and intent and creating and doing things.
Any, yes, raising your hand, you over there tapping your face.
So, I was going to, I want to go back, and I hope that people here or anybody who's out in the interverse, I really want the takeaway to be that no matter where you are in your life, it's never too late. I know it sounds cliche, but it really is never too late to just grasp whatever it is you want to do and just make it happen. And to your point, right. To your point, if you wait, you're gonna be waiting. You're gonna be waiting in your grave. No, seriously. You especially now, and keep in mind, when I was getting started with all of this, social media and the access was just coming into the fold. Now there's so many avenues and ways to do things. I mean, people are literally making something out of nothing based on, how they use social media. That's not me, but to those who do, that's great. But just know that information is out there. If you want to know something, you can learn it.
Yeah.
You can totally do that.
And and I think that's a good kind of segue to this follow-up question that I have for you, which is around this idea of the intersection between art and technology, because it is a space that you frequent, right? And there's been so much chatter and perhaps even anxiety from artists around this whole AI thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, if that's something that you've been thinking about, if that's something that you have even begun to experiment or explore with in your work.
Yeah, I haven't begun to really experiment or explore AI in my creative practice. But yes, the chatter is top of mind, and I think I'm just like everybody else, just seeing what it's doing now and what it's going to do. I feel like for whatever advancements come in that realm, there will always be a differentiation between an artist's hand and generative art. Not that generative art is not an artist's hand, but you know what I mean? I think there's just something to be said about, a human hand on the surface, creating things and crafting things. I don't think that will ever really go away. Now, I'm not saying that I won't explore AI, but right now, I'm not into it. I'm not into it. I have seen, there was something I saw where, actually it was a Facebook post. One of my Facebook friends posted some pictures of herself in different, I guess based on chat, what is it?
Chat GPT.
Thank you. Do I sound like I'm 80? What the heck is Chat GPT. And first of all, they were astounding. And then I was like, oh, because initially I thought they were photographs. And somebody, somewhere down in the chat was like, oh, photographers beware. And I was like, oh, I don't know. The photographer's hand is a very, you know it. Yeah. There's a soul that you won't get from Chat GPT.
Well, that's the thing about art too, is that it's not about perfection.
It's not about perfection. Yeah. And that's the beauty.
That's right. That's what makes the art compelling, right? Is that a person who's an imperfect person made this thing. You know what I mean? Like there's aspects of it that are Yeah, you know, like it's not quite perfect. Like the computer generated stuff is almost, it almost becomes sterile because it's so
Right,
perfect.
right, I agree. So yeah, I don't know anytime soon, you know, I say that, but, you know, because I do different things, the video projection work that I do, there may be space for some general work there, but for the most part, I still curate and craft the imagery that, you know, that I make for these productions. So, I don't know, it's unknown. It's not unknown, it's actually known, but it's really more of a, we'll see what it does.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions from online? I think we are, yeah, we're right about our time.
Okay.
But we want to give a hand to Kimberly Binns.
Thank you. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspectives with us. I mean, I think it's really important, again, for people to realize, you know, to your point, and as is evidence in your example, is that you can design, you know, the space that you want to be in. You can design the life you want to live. You can design the person that you want to be, right? But it's all about intention and, you know, deliberation and commitment, right?
And commitment, because it takes work. It does take work, and, you know, some semblance of faith. You will eat this month. You will.
It's kind of like that AI thing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not going to be perfect, but it will be beautiful. And with that, we're going to sign off. This is ADAMA, the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta.
I appreciate you, friend.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I can't leave without paying the bills. If you're watching us online, or even if you're in the room and you want to support ADAMA, you can do that by going to our website, adamatl.org. We are a nonprofit organization. We have aspirations of being a world-class destination for the African diaspora arts and culture here in the city of Atlanta, and we can do that, and we will do that with your support. Thank you for joining us. I'm Fahamu Pecou. This has been the ADAMA Arts Salon. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.